Hey there, it's Katie from the Health, Wellness, and Chocolate Blueprint. Thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I wanted to talk to you today. If you hear barking or a little bit of whining, it's not me. I have a little golden puppy, and everybody went out because there was a hurricane that kind of. We live in Northeast Pennsylvania, so it didn't hit us directly, but we did get a lot of rain from it, and so some of the creeks there's some raging waters. And so my husband was like, I'm going to go show the kids, like, we're going to go look at the creek and stuff. Because when it's normal, they'll go splash around in the creek. So he wanted to show them what it looked like with all that rain we had yesterday. So anyway, I'm alone, but that means the puppy is kind of being needy, which is kind of cute, but a little distracting. So anyway, if you hear her, this is my puppy. I wanted to tell you too, before we start, that the doors right now for the Health and Wellness Blueprint are open. So if you wanted to get in and give the trial a chance, or the dollar trial I have, or the actual blueprint itself, the doors are open right now for you to join it. But they are closing on September 13th. Actually, that's a Monday, so we're probably September 12th. By midnight, the doors are going to close, and then you'll just be waitlisted if you wanted to get in before then or after that point. And they're not going to open again until January. So if you've been on the fence, or you've been like, oh, I'll do it later, or when I think of it, I'll do it again, there hasn't really been a sense of urgency because I've always just had open enrollment for it. But I am going to close the doors because on September 13th, we are going to start a 12-week coaching program along with the Health and Wellness Blueprint. So we'll be meeting live. I'll be answering your questions as they come up for the 12 weeks. It'll be a 12-week intensive along with the Health and Wellness Blueprint. And then you'll have the Health and Wellness Blueprint. You have lifetime access to that, but then our 12 weeks will end. And then we'll be starting another 12-week session come January. So I just wanted to make you aware that if you were thinking about getting in and you want help and support for the holidays, which I know sometimes, even if you're not trying to lose weight, but maybe you're trying to avoid weight gain, this would be a fantastic opportunity for you to get in there before the doors shut. So go ahead and join. Okay, so shameless plug done. Let's head to our topic now. And actually, you know what? I'm going to silence my phone because I keep getting some texts. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk to you about today was this idea of authority. Now, this is important, especially when it comes to weight loss, because if you think about with a diet mentality, right? Like we are always trying to have someone else tell us like how much to eat, okay, so what should I eat? What time should I eat? What combinations of food should I eat? Like we want someone to tell us exactly what to do, right? We want them to tell us how much I should work out for, how much weight should I lift, how many calories should I take in? How many grams of carbs? How many grams of fat? How many grams of protein should I do? Right? Like we're looking for someone, what time should I fall asleep? How much sleep should I get? Right? Like there's so many things we want to be told what to do. And I think we do that because we lack maybe some self-belief that we can do it ourselves, or that we have agency to do it. And so we kind of pass the buck on to someone else. And it helps us in a way to do that, because then if we fail, we're like, oh, that diet didn't work for me, or that just didn't work out because that just wasn't for me, right? But when it comes to actual long-lasting, sustainable weight loss, one of the key like things that you need to have in your toolbox or life skill, let me say it that way. One of the life skills that you must have in your toolbox is this idea of self-efficacy. And that's why maybe weight loss has been so hard for you, because you've been relying on everybody else to tell you what to do. And then if it doesn't work out, because there is like a part of us too that is a little bit of a rebellious person. And then we're like, I don't want to behave, or I don't want to listen to what they have to tell me. I'm just going to do my own thing. And then of course, we wind up not following through or whatever, right? So when it comes to weight loss, we always kind of think someone else knows better than us, how much, when, where, all that stuff, right? But, part of, probably a huge part of weight loss is reclaiming your life and then being the authority in your own life. And we've talked about before in prior podcasts about this feeling of powerless. Like we feel powerless over food. We feel like powerless to be effective in our own lives. And so we feel like food and eating is kind of the only solution we have to be feeling better. And so it feels impossible to resist food whenever we feel powerless. And having authority and saying, okay, no, I can be my own agent in my life. I can have authority and I can have self-control, or I don't have to follow someone else's opinion on should I eat vegan or should I only be keto or, whatever. Like, you can be able to have the authority in your life to say, you know what, I really feel so tired if I eat keto only, or man, I have such low energy when I just eat as a vegan, or it's so hard because there's nothing better than a delicious steak. I love it. And being a vegan is really hard for me, right? Like, you have agency in your life to be able to decide for yourself what works for you, what gives you energy, what makes you feel nourished, and what lights you up, rather than giving that power away to other people. And so especially when you get inside the Health and Wellness Blueprint, I will give you tools and walk you through how to reclaim your authority, especially when it comes to your eating habits. And then you won't feel so powerless anymore, and food won't feel so irresistible. And then that feeling of constantly feeling deprived, that kind of is eliminated too. Give me one sec. Okay. So that's important, right? And here's another part of that as well. When you start to reclaim that authority, you're also simultaneously building your self-efficacy, which as a natural byproduct increases your self-esteem. And when that happens, you start to believe, okay, I think I could do this. Like, I just was able to do it. And that's why I give you those splashes of joy to do, like that work. If you go back to like the very first podcast, I have you write down your food 24 hours ahead of time. And then when you have that irresistible, you feel powerless to not eat, you have a craving, you don't feel like you can even get beyond. I have you sit with that feeling and try to understand where it's coming from and why does it feel so powerful. But in the meantime, for every 15 minutes you don't answer that urge, you can go ahead and take a splash of joy, which is just like it could be anything really, just a tiny clear glass, and put it in your jar and give yourself a splash of joy in your joy jar for every 15 minutes. And that is based on a technique called surfing the urge, right? You don't answer the craving, you surf the urge, but you're changing the brain patterns that you have so that your brain starts to learn, okay, just because I have this feeling or I have this urge doesn't mean I have to answer it. Like, I'm not obligated to just respond to every single whim my brain has. And you learn self-efficacy, you learn you have authority over your cravings, over your own flesh. Like, you don't have to answer it constantly, okay? So that technique, that tool will help you naturally create new neural pathways in your brain, but also increase your self-esteem, because now you finally believe like, hey, you know what? I was able to not have that cake for 3 hours. And last time I ate the whole thing. The first 20 minutes I was by myself, right? Like, you'll start to see like, hey, I can go much longer. And then pretty soon all those glass beads in your jar represent calories you didn't eat. It represents new neural pathways in your brain. So it's really a fantastic tool. And I give that to you right in the first few podcasts. So if you haven't heard those, go back and listen, because there's a 5-day weight loss challenge that I did straight off the bat when I kicked this whole podcast off. And if that's something you want to get started with, go back and start listening to the very first ones. The first 5, I believe, will get you started right away. So, you'll begin to believe like, hey, I could do this. And then what happens, the next thing your brain allows you is to start daydreaming about what's possible. And you can think like, okay, if I can do this, what else can I do? And what happens then too is like you stop feeling like you need to be rescued, like you need somebody outside of yourself to help you, right? You stop feeling so powerless and you start thinking, okay, I can do this, right? So this allows you the freedom to try out eating styles, because then once you stop feeling like you need to be rescued and you can start imagining or allow yourself to imagine, okay, what is possible for me? Then this is the fun part. Then you don't feel so afraid of failure, because you have this kind of like bank account full of self-efficacy. And so if you try out a new eating plan, but you find, oh, this one, I feel starving throughout the day when I eat this way, or man, I wish I didn't have that cereal because I am hungry by 10 a.m., right? And so I know having cereal in the morning isn't going to work for me. Rather than telling yourself, I had cereal and I'm so disgusting. By 10 a.m. I was starving and what's wrong with me? I'm flawed, right? Like you wouldn't think that because you just know like, okay, that's not for me because it doesn't nourish me the way it needs to for me to be able to stay full for that amount of time. Okay. So you have less fear of failure and you have a more willingness to try things that maybe have been beyond you. And something I have learned, especially as I've been growing Health, Wellness, and Chocolate, and growing a business and weight loss are very similar, and like, so when it comes to business, like, okay, I'm going to try this and see if it works. And I'm going to try that and see if it works. And like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean I'm a failure and I have nothing of value to give. It just means, okay, that one didn't work. Let me tweak and try something else, right? And dieting and like weight loss is kind of the same thing. Like for example, last year I was like, let me try fasting because I've read a lot about it. And I still have like 10 pounds left from having Will last year. So I was like, okay, let me try fasting and see if there's anything to this, right? I was so miserable. I don't know if it triggered something in my brain that made me feel hungry. And I was like, this is terrible. I will never fast again. Because when I finally let myself eat, I was like gobbling my food. And it was like going right back to this whole dieting thing where it's like, I didn't eat till noon and I'd eat from noon till 5, like the 5-hour eating window. I was so chaotic and I was like, this is not healthy for me. Maybe people don't have those issues or those triggers, but for me, intermittent fasting was a disaster. But I didn't make it mean I'm a disaster. It was just something I was willing to try to see, okay, is there any merit to this? I teach a completely different point of view. And so like, I don't teach food scarcity because I think that makes you feel chaotic and crazy. And that's exactly how I felt when I was fasting. So it kind of confirmed like what I teach anyway. But like I didn't make it mean like I have no self-control or I am inherently flawed. It was just like this way of eating is not for me. Now, some people thrive with that way of eating. They love just that window and then it's like they don't have to think about eating the rest of the day and there's no drama attached and it's like, oh, it's only 10. I don't have to eat till noon. And then they go about their day, right? Like, so there's different points of view and you have to find what works for you. But the point of this is being willing to try rather than just being told, okay, I'm going to eat this way. And if I don't do well, then it's because I'm inherently flawed, right? That's not fair for you at all. Okay. So this allows you the freedom to try out eating styles that work for you. And then also a huge part of extra weight on a body is a life out of balance. Okay. So that's a kind of another pillar of weight loss that I teach. But, one thing you have to do is start to find hobbies that light you up or interests or purpose that are outside of you that are ways for you to fill up so that food isn't so important, okay? And then you learn how to design your life for yourself and create freedom and empowerment on your own terms. And then those things are what allow you to have that new relationship with food. So, you can experiment with different styles of eating to find out what works for you without fear of failure because it's not a failure. It's just a learning experience at that point. Okay. And you learn like, okay, this isn't going to work. And that's okay. It's not a character flaw in me. And you'll learn too, like how does food react in your own body? And again, what kind of foods nourish and fill you up? I know for a fact, if I had a waffle with syrup in the morning, I would be starving within an hour. Starving. I know that because I know my body. Same thing happens with if I had a bagel in the morning. Even I never eat a whole one. If I have one, it would be a half a bagel. If I have that, I am so hungry. And then like by 10 a.m., by 9:30, I am starving. Like I know my body, if I have anything that is high in carbohydrates and I don't balance it out with a protein or some form of fat, I'm starving. like it just goes right through me. Same with an apple. If I have an apple and that's all I have, within about an hour, I am beyond hungry. And it makes no sense, but now I know my body. It's like, oh, why am I so hungry? Is it because I have no self-control? Is it because I have no willpower? Like, no, you had an apple an hour ago and your body just blew through those carbs, released extra insulin, and now you're super hungry. Your brain is like thinking it's time to eat because there's so much stuff going on, right? Like, so, like, don't internalize everything to make it seem like you're flawed for some reason or another, right? And then you'll get to learn too what combinations of food work for you and nourish you. So I'll have a poached egg on a piece of rye bread with butter, and that is sufficient for me. For years, I would have 2 poached eggs on 2 pieces of rye bread with butter. And when I was like, I probably could get, like, after I had eaten the first piece of bread with butter, I was like, I wonder if I could do without the second, like the other half of this food. And to be honest with you, I was scared to try. I was like, oh, I hate being hungry. Like, I really hate being hungry. And I think that kind of goes back to the dieting days. But I was like, you know what, just try it. And then give yourself permission, if you get hungry, to have the other half, right? And so I tried it and I was stunned that I wasn't starving. I was like, okay, this does satisfy me. And that little tiny baby step of just eating half was like sufficient. I was like, okay, I can do this. That's okay. I don't need 2 poached eggs on 2 pieces of bread. One does fill me up, and I'm okay with that. And so I was willing to learn how food reacts in my body. Now, like, I love avocados. Some people, it gives them a stomach ache, right? Or makes them very gassy. Or, you're going to learn, and you're going to give yourself the freedom to learn what combinations of food will nourish you and fill you up. And the opposite too, like what combinations of food make you feel kind of lousy. Like I said, bagels, waffles, cereal, all those like really highly processed carbohydrates, for me, leave me starving. And I know for me, if I'm starving, it is bad news because my brain's like, oh my goodness, something's wrong. This is an emergency now, right? Because of all those years of dieting, it just puts me right back into that feeling of like panic, right? My brain really starts to make me panic, and I can't allow that to happen because I know then I gobble food. Like it's been an eye-opening experience for me. So rather than allow myself like, oh, we're just going to have cereal because it's fortified and has all these nutrients, I like, no, that isn't good for my body because I know how my brain is going to react to it. I'm going to digest it really fast, and then I'm going to be starving, and then I'm going to feel like a failure or like I have no control or no willpower. So I usually try to have like a higher protein. Like I'll have oatmeal. I found a great recipe for baked oatmeal with pumpkin and cinnamon. That is wonderful. It keeps me full. I feel nourished with it. I found some really great recipes over at the, the Real Food RDs, or Real Food Registered Dietitians. They have tons of menus and tons of different recipes that are like whole foods that are nourishing, that really help keep you well fed. But also they're created by registered dietitians. I think there's 3 of them, and they work. I'm not plugging them. I'm just letting you know they have some really great info there. And it's the Real Food RDs, I think, is the name of their thing. They're on Instagram, and then they have a website too. If you just Google it, I'm sure you could find them. But anyway, be willing to try different things, but not make it mean like, oh, wait, this didn't work, so I'm a failure, right? Like keep your authority. Like, no, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to be willing to fail and see what eating patterns work for me. And then the goal is to find what works for you, that keeps you nourished, that keeps you having enough energy for yourself throughout the day, but also keeps you sustained and satisfied so that you're not constantly thinking about food, where you're constantly hungry or feeling like you have to use willpower to not eat, because you're making the choices and you're calling the shots. And again, that helps your mindset, and that helps reduce those feelings of deprivation, because you didn't feel powerless in your decisions to hit those goals, right? Like you set the goals for yourself, you pick out the food that you want to eat, you're willing to try it and see if it's going to work for you. And then you're going to like live it out. You're going to walk it out and not feel like you have like, oh, I'm so deprived because I can't have this or that. Instead, you're like, oh no, I chose not to have it when I wrote out my food plan ahead of time. So you don't have to feel sorry for yourself if you decide you're not going to have dessert at a birthday party, or oh, I wish I could go out to eat, but I told myself I was going to stay home and make something homemade. But like you feel bad for yourself, or you feel sorry for yourself. Like, oh, why can't I just be like a normal person and just go eat what I want? Which, by the way, is its own little mind drama all on its own, like normal. And I think I even did a podcast on that. Like, what is really normal? Like, we think thin people eat a certain way, or when they're at a certain weight, like they eat whatever they want, and actually studies have shown that's really not true. They just self-regulate a little bit better. Okay, so you don't have to feel sorry for yourself eating that way, because you've chose it. Okay, and you know your long-term goals, and you know your why, and you know why you want to lose weight. Okay, like if someone else is telling you have to lose weight, that's not really motivating, right? Because again, that's outside of you. But like, you have to find a reason. Your reason why behind the desire for you to lose weight has to be compelling enough, and you have to like it enough for you to stick with it. Especially when things get hard, especially when you're sitting there putting those splashes of joy in the joy jar and you're feeling not joyful. You're feeling maybe a little resentful, or a little bit like, this really stinks. I'm not very happy about this, right? Like, you have to really like your reason why, because then you can come back to your brain and say, no, look, this is important to me. I don't want to be out of breath going from the car to the store, or I don't want my knees to hurt. I want to be able to, chase my kids in the yard, or play with my grandkids, or take my dog for a walk without feeling like exhausted when I'm done, or having my knees hurt at the end of the day, or I want to look sexy or cute in these cute outfits and not feel like my clothes are tight, and I just want to feel comfortable in my own skin. Those are all great reasons, but you have to like your reason, especially when you're kind of in the drudgery of the weight loss, and maybe it's not coming off as quick as you like, or you're doing the hard work, and you might feel a little bit sad, or you might feel like, hey, I really wish this wasn't such an issue in my life. Like, you have to kind of have something bigger than yourself to think about while you're going through that and changing your life around. And it's not necessarily easy, right? But it is simple. It's just not easy all the time. Okay. So make sure when you go to choose a reason for your weight loss that you actually like it. And then also what happens too is, once you know, and you kind of find what works for you, and it kind of clicks, and you're on your way, and you're doing the hard work, and you have your reason why, and you like it, and you're in the trenches, and you're building that self-efficacy. You're growing in your belief that this is possible. You know that you're the agency of your own life. Then that anxious feeling, or that like that feeling in a hurry, like this weight has to come off. I have to get it done by, the next month. This has to be done. It's like that kind of can abate a little bit, which helps too, especially if you're an emotional eater. Like that hurriness and that frustration, or like that forcing life, like, no, this has to work. I did this with my year of grace. I was like, I am done, and I'm just going to lose weight. I'm going to figure out the right way to do it. I'm not going to be in a hurry, but I'm going to get it done, and it's going to be right. And I'm going to just give myself grace to learn what I need to learn, and fail as many times as I need to fail till I figure it out, right? And then I had that peace and that confidence in myself that I could lose weight. And then the emotions calm down. And once the emotions calm down, I feel like the hunger dial kind of got turned down a bit, because that forcing, or that anxiousness, or that frustration was like, it's okay. I'm not going anywhere. This will come off. It just takes time. It took time to come on. It'll take time to come off. I just need to find what works. Something will work. And I just need to give myself that grace and figure it out. And so that's why authority, that's really kind of the root of why I don't tell you what to eat when you come into the blueprint. I say, you write down what you're going to eat 24 hours ahead of time, and then your job is to stick with it, because you'll want to rebel. Like, you'll send me an email like, your eating plan is terrible, I hate you. But like, I don't give an eating plan, because and two, by the time people come to me, they know what the healthy foods are. They know what they need to eat in order to feel nourished, for the most part, right? I think everybody does in this day and age. And if you don't, like, Google it, you'll find some pretty decent information. So you need to decide that for yourself. But the hard work, okay, like if food plans worked and diets worked, you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast, right? Like you would just be like, oh, and I hate when people are like, oh, you want to lose weight? Just push the plate away. Like, that is such an overly simplification and almost insulting thing to say to somebody, especially someone who's struggled with weight for a long time. It's like, man, if that was that easy, I would be thin too, right? Like, that's kind of really a condescending attitude to have. But instead, just be like, I'm going to give myself this time. I'm going to give myself this grace to figure out what I need to be able to be successful in this. And I'm going to pick out foods that I know will serve my body, that will nourish me, that will keep me satisfied, so that I'm not having these like high sugared spikes and then these terrible sugar lows and feeling, maybe lightheaded because I'm not eating enough. Like, coming from a place of respect and saying, look, I'm going to take good care of you right now, body, where you are, because I want you to feel good in the future. And then start doing that. And then you can dial down the frustration and the hurriedness and the feeling of not knowing what to do, right? Like, you give yourself the space and the grace to say, okay, I'm going to figure this out, and I'm going to move forward every day. I'm just going to do the best I can every single day. And then there you go. Every day things add up, right? So, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, head into the Health and Wellness Blueprint right now. The doors are going to close on September 12th, and then that's it until the new year. So get in there now. I would love to help you, especially through the holidays. I know that's a tough time of year, especially for people who are emotional eaters. It's stressful. Sometimes there's situations that come up that we want to be different and they're not. And that causes us to want to turn to food, and the days get shorter and the days get colder. And sometimes like that little switch of sadness might get turned on, and that causes you some extra weight gain. So get in there now before the doors close, so that you can be successful in what you want to do and have your goals all set going forward for the fall. In the meantime, I will see you next week. I hope you have an awesome, awesome day. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.